Violent repression by state security forces against anti-government demonstrators in Colombia continues, with at least 37 people killed. Iran announced successful clinical trials of a domestically produced coronavirus vaccine candidate named after the late nuclear scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. Israeli settlers continue to destroy Palestinian land and homes in the occupied West Bank, while Russia has called for a de-escalation of the violence against Palestinians in Israeli-occupied East Jerusalem. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Katrina Goss. Colombians have taken to the streets for the 8th day this Wednesday with massive mobilization by the National Strike Committee in defiance of a violent crackdown by security forces. At least 37 people have been killed in the repression so far, according to local NGO Temblores. Early Wednesday morning, Colombian police and army units shot live ammunition against demonstrators in several Colombian cities, as widely reported on social media accounts. The central Bolivar Square of the capital, Bogotá, saw harsh repression. According to the National Strike Committee, in the last 7 days, almost 1,500 cases of police violence were reported. 22 people sustained eye injuries as a result of the deliberate police practice of shooting at demonstrators' faces. Over 800 people have been arrested and 10 cases of sexual abuse by security forces have been confirmed, the NGO Temblores reported. Colombia's Human Rights Ombudsman has also confirmed that the whereabouts of at least 89 people are still unknown. As of Tuesday night, 10,000 academics and teachers had signed a petition calling on President Ivan Duque to order the armed forces and the national police to immediately stop the violence against demonstrators and for those responsible for the crimes committed against the civilian population to be investigated and punished. The signatories assured that the human rights violations that have been registered constitute crimes for which the state must respond. They also demanded respect for the right to peaceful protest and social mobilization as established in the Colombian Constitution. The petition concludes with the clear message: the rule of law must prevail by respecting human rights, not otherwise. International organizations, as well as Colombians around the world, have mobilized to condemn the deadly situation in Colombia as anti-government protesters continue to face violent repression by state security forces. This Wednesday, Colombian residents in the British capital London rallied to demand that President Ivan Duque put a stop to the violence. Similar scenes were also seen in the German capital Berlin, as well as in New York, the United States. And Colombian President Ivan Duque has called for dialogue to address nationwide protests, claiming he would create a space to listen to citizens despite his responsibility in the widespread violent crackdown on anti-government protesters over the past week. The move can be seen as a bid by the president to avoid further international condemnation of the deadly repression, which has seen the United Nations, the European Union and even the United States, as well as human rights organizations, hit out at state security forces for their excessive use of force. President Duque defended the security forces and said they are the main victims of the violence, despite the widespread evidence to the contrary. He also claimed that the acts of vandalism that have taken place during the anti-government protests were financed and articulated by drug trafficking mafias. The allegations are part of the repetitive claims by his government, which has failed to tackle the escalating violence in the country, instead laying blame on armed gangs, including dissidents of the disbanded leftist FARC guerrillas and members of another rebel group, the ELN, and drug traffickers. This despite the revelations of his government's support for and links to illegal armed groups and paramilitaries. Turning to Chile, where campaigns have resumed for the upcoming May 15th to 16th elections to choose municipal mayors, councillors, regional governors, and for the first time the members of the Constitutional Convention, a body that will draft the country's new constitution. Let's take a look at how the election campaign resumed with our correspondent Paola Dragnik.
These are the Chilean ultra-right parties that campaign against changing Pinochet's constitution. But they had no other option but to run constituent candidates after the triumph of the yes vote in the referendum on the rewriting of the constitution. Today, they are relaunching their campaigns.
I believe that in the Constitutional Convention we need people who have clear values and principles, while at the same time people who are capable of reaching agreements, because we are going to need agreements of 2/3 in that convention.
Among them are figures such as Constanza Huber, a lawyer at the Liberty and Development Institute who wants to be a part of the body that seeks to do away with Pinochet's constitution in order to protect unrestricted economic activity. Now, what we are going to do is to transmit motivation, not only for the candidacy, but also motivation as to why the Constitution is important, and why it is important to have people who are prepared, and people who courageously defend what we want. Also relaunching their campaigns, among thousands of others, are those who seek to regulate economic activity with principles that, for example, constitutionally protect water, education, communication, and old age pensions. They do not have large corporate campaigns contributions. They come from the social activities world. By raising our voices, we intend to represent many realities, organizations and social movements, so that this constitution has an environmental, feminist and participatory perspective.
My commitment is to the constitutional enshrinement of the right to communication, so that at least 1/3 of the radio spectrum is managed by community or alternative media.
The young people who were protagonists in the 2019 uprising are joined by leaders who have been denouncing the injustices of the neoliberal model for decades.
We have few resources, we do not have visibility in the open television media, and therefore it is an asymmetrical, unequal scenario, but we are depending on the citizenship, on the people of Chile, who were the ones who rose up. Not to make a mistake, there is no longer any justification to vote for the lesser evil, as we have been told for the past 30 years.
For the first time, indigenous people will have reserved seats. Although the electoral inequality does not change, Aliwen Antileo has been fighting for decades. Here he speaks in the documentary Apaga and Vámonos, Switch Off, almost 20 years ago.
What we have in Chile are political classes that are servile and subordinate to those big economies, and that economic model is the one that is plundering our natural resources.
Here, Aliwen campaigning today. On television, he has had no more than 1 second's coverage.
I have participated in dozens of mobilizations, land recoveries, which have earned me imprisonment, and this experience means that I know the demands of my people.
Regarding the candidates for the Constitutional Convention alone, there are thousands of names that today are seeking a seat in this unequal electoral campaign that ends on May 13th.
Italo Retamal y Paola Dragnik, Telesur, Chile.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Iran has announced successful trials on humans of a domestically produced coronavirus vaccine, the Islamic Republic News Agency reported. The vaccine was named Fakhra in memory of the late nuclear scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, who was killed in an attack Iran has said was orchestrated by the Israeli regime. The scientist's son participated in the trials as a volunteer. The first clinical trials were developed by the Iranian Defense Ministry, which began in March. Iran has developed several domestic coronavirus vaccine candidates. Phase 3 trials of the Corviran Baccarat vaccine began in late April. The director of the scientific committee at Iran's Anti-Coronavirus Crisis Center said that the Fakhra shot could be approved for use in May, and other domestic medications could follow in another 2 to 3 months. India has once again broken its record for daily COVID-19 related fatalities as the deadly health crisis continues to spiral out of control. In the last 24 hours, health authorities reported over 3,700 deaths. This takes India's total death toll to more than 222,000, according to a tally by Johns Hopkins University. India has now reported over 20.2 million cases of the coronavirus, only second to the United States. 10 million of India's cases have been reported in the last 4 months, after the country took 10 months to reach its first 10 million. Despite the huge figures, experts have warned the real numbers are likely to be much higher. The World Health Organization announced on Wednesday it will set up a global data hub in Berlin to analyze information on emerging pandemic threats, filling in the gaps exposed by COVID-19.
Modern technologies give us unprecedented tools for collecting, analyzing, and disseminating data in real time around the world. That's what the WHO Hub for Pandemic and Epidemic Intelligence aims to do. Hosted in Berlin, the WHO Hub will be a global center that works with partners around the world to lead innovations in pandemic and epidemic intelligence, data, surveillance, and analytics. The WHO Hub will be part of the WHO Health Emergencies Program, and we expect it to play a vital role in the global health security ecosystem.
In Brazil, former health ministers are expected to provide further evidence of President Jair Bolsonaro's criminal negligence in fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, as the Senate Inquiry Commission continues to hear testimonies. On Tuesday, the Commission questioned former Health Minister Luis Henrique Mandetta, who was fired by Bolsonaro over clashes on how to best handle the coronavirus outbreak. Mandetta was clear on laying blame at Bolsonaro's feet for the lack of measures to control the spread of the virus. Bolsonaro has had 4 health ministers since the pandemic began, and all are to testify before the Senate. The president has repeatedly ignored expert advice and pushed to protect the economy over the lives of Brazilians, over 400,000 of whom have succumbed to COVID-19. In April, the president threatened to use the armed forces to break night curfews and lockdowns decreed by federal state authorities. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. On Tuesday, Israeli settlers set fire to Palestinian lands in the village of Barin in the occupied West Bank as part of a series of attacks against Palestinians. According to a local media outlet, a group of Israeli settlers also threw stones at several houses in Kusra village in the northern West Bank on Monday. Meanwhile, Israeli soldiers repressed Palestinians in the city of Nablus and arrested 11 people. In this context, Palestinian news agency Wafa reported that Israeli forces demolished 2 Palestinian structures and seized lands in the southern district of Bethlehem on Tuesday. There's been an escalation of attacks on Palestinians in recent weeks, as seen in Israeli-occupied East Jerusalem, where far-right Jewish extremists attacked Palestinians and settlers moved to occupy their homes. And on Wednesday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, meeting with his Palestinian counterpart Riyad al-Maliki in Moscow, called for a de-escalation in Israeli-occupied East Jerusalem, where Palestinians have suffered increasing attacks in recent weeks. The Russian Foreign Minister supported the idea of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas on gathering an international conference on Palestinian-Israeli settlement. Lavrov said Russia is working on intensifying the work of the Middle East Quartet, which would bring together Russia, the United States, the European Union and the United Nations on Palestinian-Israeli settlement, and noted that the format was revived after Joe Biden assumed the US presidency. He explained that in order to activate this platform, efforts are ongoing with other members of the quartet to consider the possibility of organising a meeting at the level of foreign ministers. Meanwhile, the Palestinian foreign minister supported the idea of a quartet ministerial meeting, saying only the quartet can activate the political process, and praised Russia's role. However, he stressed that one country alone cannot be the only mediator on the Palestinian-Israeli settlement issue. This Wednesday, United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Ukraine as part of his trip to the European Union in another show of US support amidst tensions with Russia. In a statement announcing the trip, the US State Department said the Secretary would meet on Wednesday and Thursday with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, senior officials and civil society representatives. Blinken's visit is preceded by a 3-day stop in London, where he attended a meeting of foreign ministers of the group of 7 industrialised countries, which focused on the supposed threat posed by Russia. The visit comes after the recent massing of troops and military equipment by Ukraine along its border with Russia in what appeared to be a bid to retake control of the self-proclaimed People's Republics in Luhansk and Donetsk. On Wednesday, France confirmed the disappearance in Mali of 46-year-old journalist Olivier Dubois, who worked with various media. Dubois had said in a short video he was abducted on April 8th in Gao, central Mali, by the Group for the Support of Islam and Muslims, the biggest jihadist alliance in the Sahel region.
I can confirm the disappearance in Mali of journalist Olivier Dubois, and I would like to immediately send my thoughts to him, to his family and to all the editorial staff with whom he used to work. We are obviously in contact with his family, with his loved ones, and our service are currently carrying out the usual technical checks on the video, which has been broadcast, but I have no more information to give you at this stage.
To the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesourenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.